We're going live.
Going live. Oh, shoot.
Uh-oh.
I'm good.
Okay. And now we're live as
We're
far as I know.
live.
We are.
All right. Let's see if I
Here
can.
we are.
Here we are.
So, and indeed, we are here as far as I can see. Um, Welcome, everyone, to our weekly little chat. I'm Artistic Director Randy Dixon, Unexpected Productions, and today my guest is Mary Bacarella, and I'll get into Mary's history here in a minute. But before I do, some announcements. One is, as many of you know or have heard before, these past couple weeks we've not been doing shows because we're sort of retooling and fixing all the stuff that needs to be fixed. So we're going to be premiering new shows starting February 3rd and February 6th. February 3rd will be a duo show, which is Wednesday, and February 6th will be a Saturday night, and that will be a show called Fact or Fiction, which is a monologue-based show, a personal storytelling-based show that includes some improv. And hope you come check those out. And they will both be at 7 p.m. as a start time. So we're not doing 8:30, but we're moving our shows up to 7 p.m. to allow other people in the country to watch us at a semi-reasonable time. If you have questions, feel free to post them here in the Facebook chat. Otherwise, if you want to make a donation, you want to find out more about shows, you want to find out more about classes, go to unexpectedproductions.org and you can do all that. But for now, I'm going to chat with Mary. So Mary and I have a very long history,
36, I think.
36 years of friendship. And Mary has been around UP. She was our business manager for many years. She just hung out for a long time. Point being, she knows where all the bodies are buried. And she might reveal a few of those locations maybe today. We'll find out. And Mary has also a long and, shall I say, checkered history in Seattle.
Exactly.
Involving all the local things that tourists love: the Space Needle, the Seattle Film Festival, the Pike Place Market, the Gum Wall, everything. Mary's had her hands on. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. So we'll see what happens.
Randy, I
Yeah.
just got a text from somebody watching saying, and you know who this is. Are you on? All I see is Mary smiling and the announcement. That would be our former managing director, Josh Conescu.
Oh, I see. Well, shoot me. I'm watching this on Facebook, so I'm assuming that
Text us, Josh, if you see us.
yeah, or when you see us. Yes. So I'm going to keep going because as
Please.
far as I know, we're still on. Um, so Mary, let's go in the Wayback Machine and go way back. And we were talking a little bit about this before, but I would love for we get a lot of students, we get a lot of UP people, we get company members who watch this, but just how you first came across improv or came across what's now Unexpected Productions. Back then it was still just Seattle Theater Sports. But sort of like because what I find interesting, and we'll touch upon a little bit later, is that you're not really a performer in terms of getting on stage and improvising. You're always behind the scenes and on the business side of it, but not on stage, as a lot of people who we've had on the show have been on stage. So I'm curious about that. So what piqued your curiosity way back when?
Well, so I've always been a supporter and interested in theater ever since I was a kid. It came from my family. My brothers were all in the high school plays. So I was in high school plays, community theater. I at one point thought I'm going to be an actress. But I ended up after college, after grad school, moving out to Seattle in 1983. I'm very old. And I actually did a couple of plays out here, very, very small roles, and realized I wasn't very talented as an actress when I saw people in Seattle. So I thought, well, okay, but I still want to do theater. And my first job in Seattle was at a company called Temporaries Incorporated, and it was a temporary help placement. And I would place people in jobs. And this one woman came in and we hit it off, and her name was Rebecca Stockley. If our history of unexpected productions in theater sports and Bay Area theater sports knows, Rebecca Stockley is an amazing improviser teacher and has taken her career as far as you all have taken, the group I know have taken their careers. And Rebecca came in and she was one of my temporary employees. And she got involved in theater sports. And she and I always talked about theater. And she came in and said, "You should be part of this group." She said, "They're really fun." She said, "It's mostly all men." I don't know why she said that, but she did. And they're all straight, and you should be part of it. And so I came to, oh God, what was that place in Ballard? Ross Hall,
Right. Wow.
and took a class that Floyd taught.
Right.
And the other thing that happened was Rebecca said, she came to the group and said, "There's somebody, if you need work, that understands the schedule of people being in theater." And so a number of actors came and musicians came. So I don't know if you remember Uncle Bonsai.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of them came. Josh Conescu came, former managing director and also actor and improviser. He actually I met Josh, he sat in my chair and said I can work every other Wednesday afternoon, and never understood why I couldn't place him. Keith Dahlgren, another former managing director. He actually was in a job for about 6 weeks, and afterwards they hired him, and he was there for years. It was the Sisters of Providence. So Keith had a job there. Rebecca worked there on and off. There was a number. You did not. You must have been more of a working actor, I guess. But yeah, and so the first year I was there, I think, they always did, Temporary Incorporated always did some sort of fundraiser collecting food. And so I was talking to Rebecca, and Rebecca's like, "Well, let's do a show. We've got all these actors." And so we ended up doing a fundraiser at Pioneer Square Theater. And again, I didn't know you guys yet. I only knew the ones that were working at Temporaries Incorporated. And Keith Dahlgren came up with a friend of his, Lynn Kapelke, to do an improvised Moby Dick or something, like a Masterpiece Theater. And so Andrew Hammoudi played Alistair Cook and introduced the whole thing. Right. And then they did this Moby Dick thing for half of it. And then you guys did theater sports for the other half and raised money for, I think it was Northwest Harvest through Temporaries Incorporated.
Right.
And that's how I got involved. And I first became a stage manager. And I was a stage manager at Swanee's, and then ended up doing the business stuff.
Right.
Huh. So that's how I got started.
Well, there you go. And that was back in the day when we thought somehow Moby Dick would be a big draw for audiences.
Exactly.
I know.
We raised money.
Let's do Moby Dick.
It's Moby Dick.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Let's do War and Peace. That'll be improvised War and Peace. That'll be
exactly
right.
So and,
yeah. No, I never did the temp stuff because at that time, since you are now running the market, I was working in the market. I was selling jewelry,
That's
photos, whatnot during the day. So that was my actor gig.
That's right. You sold little rubber chickens for Susan McPherson.
I did.
Little rubber chicken pins.
Somewhere
I still have mine.
I still have one of those somewhere. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah, I sold a lot of stuff, including my soul.
You're still doing it.
I'm still doing it.
And so am I now.
Right. I've got a lot of soul, Mary. I got a lot of soul to sell. So that's the way it works. Wow. And so do you recall, had you been exposed to improv before you got involved with UP?
The only improv that, my brother Bill's watching, just so you know, he just texted me.
Oh, okay. Hi, Bill.
So seriously, you're going to laugh, Randy, because you know my musical theater love, my love for musical theater. The only thing I knew about improv was the song from Chorus Line that Priscilla Lopez sang, "Nothing," that you went to an improv class. Remember that?
Yeah.
That's all I knew about improv.
Wow.
I saw that in high school. That is all I knew about improv.
Okay.
So why I fell in love with all of you in improv, I have no clue.
Okay. I have two quick things to share, and then I have a serious question.
Yes.
One is Paul Killam says, "Hi, Mary."
Hi, Paul Killam.
So, watching from San Francisco, I assume. The second thing was we had that musical comedy conversation because there was a time when we could almost do an entire cast of Grease, the musical Grease, from within our company, because we had all done Grease at different points.
I was Frenchie
Yeah, I was
in
Danny
Michigan.
DeVito. Yeah,
Of course you were.
yeah, and I haven't changed at all, so I could still do it. No. Okay, so the song "Nothing" is
Right there about
your
improv.
experience with improv prior to coming into it. What do you reflecting back? Do you remember like first seeing it? And were you like, what the hell's this? Or wow, this is amazing? Or well, you know what? I'm not sure Rebecca's talking, and you know.
Well, so I think before it's over 35 years ago, and I'm very old. So I'm trying to remember, but I do remember my first show that I came in. It was before, I believe, when we did Moby Dick. It was just to go see, well, who are we working with here? I know Keith and I know Josh for a half a day every 2 weeks. And I know Rebecca, but who are we really working with here? Although I loved all of them. And I went to Pioneer Square and I saw the Love Handlers. You, Josh, and Floyd, my favorite team of all time. I love all of our teams, but my favorite team of all time, because it was my first team, and I thought they were hilarious and are hilarious. And I was telling you before we started, I'll never forget, you asked for a suggestion, or somebody asked for a suggestion, the Love Handlers, about some sort of illness or something wrong with you. And I said, you took my suggestion, I couldn't believe it, athlete's foot. And I remember Floyd taking the green scarf, and I don't know if it was your foot or Josh's foot, and having the green scarf be the athlete's feet, whatever, and just going up your entire body and taking over your entire body. That was the first scene or whatever that I remember at Pioneer Square, and it was the Love Handlers.
Right.
And I was hooked. I was totally hooked.
And it's been all downhill ever since.
It's actually been all uphill, I feel.
Huh. Yeah, Love Handlers. Well, and those who have been fans of this hour know that earlier, well, I guess last year, but towards the earlier part of these shows, we did a Love Handlers reunion where we had Josh Floyd there. And I will add, having worked with Josh day in and day out for a long time, that, seeing him for half a day once a week was probably enough. So I know he's watching. So
I just remember, it was at the 20th anniversary or the 25th anniversary, you had the Love Handlers come out, and all I remember is the first thing every one of you did is you came out, you brought a chair and you sat down. It was like, wow. You just kind of sat down on stage. I said, yeah, that's where we are now.
Right. Well, that's what we grew up with, right? We grew up with the Shelley Berman, Bob Hupp, we pick up the phone and do one of those. And we couldn't afford stools, so we had to bring chairs. So
Yes.
And you were our stage manager.
I was.
And you and I were joking beforehand about the green scarves. We had the dancing colors, I believe.
The dancing colors, I know.
And there were these different scarves, and we had a trash can full of props. And basically our entire business sat in the back of your car.
Exactly, in a trash can.
We had trash can full of props. We had briefcases full of money.
We did.
And all that just lived in the back of your car.
It was odd. We'd be at these different places, and we had this, and the box office was in this brown briefcase. Let's not talk about the Velveeta box where the checks were in that Josh put together, but it was this briefcase. And I, after a show, would walk to my car with a briefcase full of money. Now, sometimes there was no money in it, because what was your rule, you guys' rule? There had to be more people in the audience than on stage, or we wouldn't do a show.
Right.
So sometimes there wasn't any money into it. And then when we got to the Intimon, there was more money into it. But I would leave was a show an hour and a half or like at midnight, and walk to my car with a briefcase with money in it.
Right.
It was the 80s.
Right. Back in Seattle, like nobody cared.
Right. Nobody cared.
Right. I still have one of those Velveeta boxes, by the way.
Yeah.
I do.
Great.
We stored checks in, because it turned out the Velveeta box was about the size of a check. So it's like
exactly. So, yeah.
But those were the days when we were doing Swannies, thanks to Mark Hershon.
Yep.
And then we would divvy up the money at the end, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
then if there was any money, and so you'd get like $3, and then you'd go upstairs to Swannies, the bar, and drink like $12 worth of beer.
That's exactly
And then,
right.
so, right.
That's
But we
exactly
were happy.
right.
We were happy.
We were happy. We were happy.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, from very early on, and you were instrumental in those days in terms of the group kind of setting, and I'm not even really sure where it started, but the group kind of getting this notion, well, what we really want is a space. What we really want is our own home, because we were so itinerant, performing in every location in town. And some of them were pretty dicey. And dicey in ways that you had to like, there is no performance space. Well, I don't know, let's stack these chairs over here and see what happens. That kind of stuff. But it became pretty early on. And that's when we started like, hey, let's not pay ourselves. Let's put it all into a kitty to try to eventually get to a space. And that was a point when obviously you became the market or the business manager, and we're sort of in charge of that. And my sense of that, and maybe you can add on to this, as I often half jokingly say, UP survived in spite of our best efforts to kill it.
Yep.
Because we just kept making mistakes and somehow it just kept going. Is that your experience?
Well, what's interesting, that is exactly my experience and what we would talk about. But I have to say, I'm talking about my experience there, but there was a whole group beforehand for a year or two of different groups that really started building this and putting this together. So, I mean, we really have to acknowledge that. I came in like third tier or something, I don't know. But Swannies, that place, it's over right before the University Bridge. We were everywhere. But we were at the group theater. I used to sleep on the couch during your show at the group theater, waiting for it to be done so we could all, leave or whatever. And then we went to the Intimon, and we were selling out a 400-seat theater. And that's when it really kind of went, you know what? We should get our own. This is my memory. We should get our own theater. And I'll never forget, I was sitting at my job. I can't remember what job it was because I had so many jobs. But Meg, and I can't remember her last name, who was in charge of us at the Intimon, called me, and we were called out at a board meeting because the rent, we were bringing in so much money because I think we gave them a percentage of the house, and we sold out and they were getting money, and they're like, this line item, what's this money? And it was like, well, that's Unexpected Productions because they do their show after our shows are over, or theater sports, whatever they're called at that point. And we were selling out a 400-seat theater, and it was like, maybe we need to really kind of organize this and get this together and become even, our own home and a bigger theater and that sort of thing. That's how I saw it. I don't know how you saw it, but.
Well, no, I mean, we were lining people up. We were selling the place out at 11 o'clock at night.
At 11 o'clock at night.
We were after their regular shows.
Yeah.
And Paul Killam, thank you. Scoundrel's Lair was the name of the.
Oh, thank you, Paul Killam. That's right. That's exactly right. It's things I cannot say right now, things that, because nobody came to that one, that you guys would shout at each other because all that was on stage were the performers or they were in the audience, and you used to say some terrible, terrible, very funny things to each other. Right. And I just sit in the back and laugh.
Well, how far we've come.
My brother said I used to come to his house and watch Saturday Night Live. Does that count as improv?
No.
Okay, sorry, Bill.
But yeah, when we moved to Intimon, I mean, we left the group theater, which was in the U District, and basically, in hindsight now, God rest the group theater. But I mean, I remember specifically because I was involved in the organization at that point. And again, another bad move. Hey, let's run a theater democratically.
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
no, that's all right. So there were a lot of friendships left behind there. Um, but talking about the group and going, we're giving all this money to the group. And the group basically kind of, treated us like crap towards the end there. And then we're like, and Intimon at the time, their big thing and Meg's big thing was, let's bring these guys over here because they're gonna rejuvenate our audience by making them younger. And fortunate for us, our audience came. Unfortunately, it didn't translate into more
No.
ticket sales for Intimon or a younger audience. Um,
But they
but
were
in the
impressed
end,
with our numbers.
they were impressed with our numbers, but
And
so was the market at that point.
yes,
And that's
yes.
how we ended up at the market in 91. Because they're going, hey, we're looking for something that's not a restaurant to be here at night. And hey, these weird people over here are lining them up around the block of the Seattle Center. So let's talk to them.
Whose
And
idea
then,
was it to come here, Randy? I don't remember that.
I won't say it was my idea, but I will
It could have
say,
been I'm sure it was your idea, but go
well,
ahead.
I knew Ann and Jim, who ran the Market Theater,
That's
and
right, the
Martha,
Market
who I grew up with,
Theater. Of
and
course.
eventually became our house manager. So when it was a movie theater, I hung out there, and
And
Gary Tucker and everybody,
yeah,
right?
Gary Tucker.
And
I saw Stop Making Sense there. I'll
I did
never forget.
too. And a bunch of other foreign films that I'm
Yeah.
not sure why I was very strange in my early 20s. But so I knew the theater. So as soon as it came up, I'm not sure it was my idea necessarily to pursue it, but it was, I was in that circle of people going, yes, we should do it, just because I knew this space. And so when it came up and they were like, hey, and they wanted something that was not a restaurant. So we got a pretty good deal on it. And it was when Newmark, right, built the
That's
Newmark
right. There's
Cinema,
a yep.
yeah, where Target is now.
Yep, there was a
Right? They,
theater there,
they
a
built
movie theater.
10plex, and so they didn't need the Market Theater. So then they just basically abandoned it, and that's kind of how we ended up um, into all this. And wow, Paul, you and I are going to have to talk. I'm going to have you on as a guest.
What did he say?
We'll just do a Scoundrels Lair episode, maybe. He was talking about playing for the bartender.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I literally know something that Josh Conescu screamed out at you guys on stage that was actually very inappropriate and very funny. And you actually did the same thing, but I can't say it here.
Right. And for a while, I think during Scoundrels Lair days, we went to that restaurant where that I can't remember what the woman's name was. Paul Kellum probably remembers. And we would request songs, and she didn't know any of the songs we would request, and but she would play something like it. And actually one I do remember with Paul specifically was she asked for requests, and Paul shouted out a Stevie Wonder song, and early Stevie Wonder, and she said, well, we don't know that one, but we know this one. And then she sang, I Just Called to Say I Love You. Oh, it was Uptight was the song.
Great.
And I'm going, this is not Uptight. This is not anywhere close to Uptight. But yeah, so
yeah. And at that time also, when we were moving into the market, didn't we then reorganize, or not? We said we needed a business leader, a managing director. Isn't that when then Josh became the managing director? Because we always had the artistic, but I don't remember managing. And then we said we need somebody to kind of take all of this on or whatever.
Well, and Josh is on here. Oh, Tamara and Treasure, Paul Kellum.
Oh my God. Paul has a memory.
My God. Okay, you and I, Paul, we're gonna talk. We're gonna do an all Scoundrels Lair, Tamara and Treasure.
Oh my God.
Wow.
He must have a diary or something, and he's going through it as we're talking.
I'm reeling, but wow. Well, I mean, the early organization, of the group was committee. So we did do things democratically. We voted everybody in, including the leadership every year. And
there'd be big fights.
Oh, Well,
I mean, if we're really, there'd be crying and fights. It's
well, there'd be
very
crying and there'd
interesting.
be fights. I tell people this and they don't believe me, but there were times at Ross Hall when we had these big meetings where it'd be like, you want to take this outside? Let's go
Exactly.
fist fight over this. And it'd be like, really, guys? Like, and
It's true. It's very true.
yeah. And yeah. So then we had the committee. They used to meet a lot at Josh's apartment. Um, and then finally we started turning it around and going, hey, you know what? Maybe we should have some like serious jobs here.
Yes, exactly. A little more organization.
And so then that's when Josh got brought in. He was already involved, but
Yeah.
got officially being the managing director.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Because he was in the movie business before.
That's right.
That.
Huge movie guy.
Huge movie guy. He was in a David Mamet film.
Right. No, he's still in it.
He is still in it.
Yeah. Garage Attendant 1 or whatever it was. Right.
Poor Josh. He can't defend himself.
So, and I saw him not that long ago in it was actually with a discussion with Rich Hawkins, where he was in I think I may have sent it to Josh actually, where Rich played Jacques Cousteau in one of those Wild Rainier commercials. And Josh was like one of the divers or one of the guys with him. Those were the days.
Those were the days. Wasn't David Silverman one of the clams for Ivers? His legs. I mean, he was in that costume.
We've got crab legs, yeah.
And you don't want to say, we know who you were. You were a very famous character, and I will let you say it.
No, that's okay.
Okay, I won't go there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ronald days are Ronald days.
Anyway. So
and actually, one of my favorite things to remember that was the few times that you and Michael would come and watch me do Ronald McDonald, and just the look on Michael's face was, like I can't even describe it. It was like he'd been shot. Just looking at me like, what the? Huh?
Come on, Randy. There's got to be something else you can do.
Really? It's gotten this bad?
I spent my birthday at a McDonald's because you were appearing somewhere. And I came out, and that's how I went. Michael and I came to watch you do your Ronald. And you had this, I don't know why I remember this stuff. You had this string, and you were doing these string tricks. And it was really, it's a sad little string trick. You came over and did it for us.
Well, in the story, I had to have a lot of pocket magic, but we're not here to talk about McDonald's, Mary.
But this is all part of our history. I have to get a
Josh,
Kleenex.
by the way,
laughing
on Facebook has posted the Rainier Beer Cousteau parody. So if anyone wants to check that out.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah. So kind of, we had this itinerant period where we performed everywhere. Scoundrels Lair, the group, we did the rep at the Leo K for a while. We were
that's right.
We were basically everywhere. All the time we were at Swanee's. We did all 3 Pioneer Square spaces. So we were just basically all over the place. And so then around 90-ish, 89-ish, 90-ish, we thought about getting a space that eventually became the Market Theater, which we took over in May of.
Was that when it was? Okay.
91, yeah. And what do you remember about that period other than?
So bringing in the place that I now work at the Pike Place Market, I do remember when we were negotiating the lease, it was kind of like, they're taking a lot of money from this theater because we had we didn't have hardly any money. I think it was it Shelley Yap that was the executive director? I was a little afraid of her. And I believe John Turnbull, who is still here, and we adore John. Mm-hmm. I believe he is the one that was kind of our property manager. He was at a moment because we have those letters about the gum wall from John. So I'm not sure if he was there in 91. I should have asked him before or afterward, but yeah. So I think it was Shelley Yap and John Turnbull, and trying to negotiate that lease. I think the 3 of us were the negotiating, but Josh kind of led it. And then the cleanup of it. But we also were looking at the theater where Jet City ended, did we not? Ended up,
Yeah.
but we ended up here because it just worked out better for us,
Yeah.
and it's been a
Well,
great
what
home
happened
for
was we
us.
were negotiating, and I remember this period pretty well. 'Cause
Okay, good, because you're
it
younger
was
than I
crazy.
am.
So we were looking at the historic University Theater where Jet City ended up,
Yep.
and have now moved out of. I guess they're going to tear that down, build apartments there.
Oh, are they really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and the guy who owned it at the time, I want to say his name was Bob something.
Ask Bob. Ask Paul Killam. He probably remembers.
Yeah, Paul probably knows. But anyway, he was insane. He was crazy. And then
Wow.
he sold it to a church, and then I think it went to somebody else, and then eventually to where Jet City moved in. But we were like, maybe Josh could clarify this as well if he's watching. I mean, there were so many times I remember kind of going, okay, we're going to go over and sign the lease. End of story. And then this guy would come up with some new weird thing. My
I think I
favorite
remember that.
was the one where he's like, oh, and by the way, my son's going to live in the projection room because it was a
You
movie
remember
theater,
that?
right? He's like, oh, my
Yes.
son's going to live in the projection room. And we were like, no, we're doing shows. Like that's where our lighting person's going to be and blah, 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 blah. And so it was all these weird things. And we were lucky we didn't sign that lease because one, within a year or so when we were talking to him, there was a major roof problem, and I'm not sure how it got resolved with him, but it would have cost us a lot of money um, to repair the roof at that time. But two, because we hadn't signed anything when the market approached us and said, hey, would you like to come down and talk about the Market Theater? We were able to run with it because we hadn't locked ourselves in with the guy in the university district.
So let me ask you a question. When that part, I don't remember that they approached us. How did that work?
Well, that was the whole, we want something that's not a restaurant.
But where'd they find us? And who approached? How the heck did they know who we were? I wonder.
I'm not exactly sure, and it gets blurry for me because I then blend it with Market Theater, movie theater days. And I
Yeah.
kind of go, was somebody there, or like John Turnbull, or was somebody at the Market Theater? But they were all gone because Newmark had taken over the Market
Right.
Theater at the time. And so I'm not really sure who it was.
Yeah, I don't know either. I remember talking to the people in the U district, and I do now remember his son's living in the projection room, but I don't know how we got here. I don't know how that happened.
Right.
Until we started negotiating.
Yeah. Well, and they actually Eugene Mazzola's with us as well.
Hi, Eugene Mazzola.
Right. And
who used to work in movies with Josh.
Right. Back in the big Hollywood, Seattle Hollywood days.
Exactly.
No. Yeah, I'm not sure how they got downwind of us, but one thing I do remember with Shelley, and then Carol took over, I think, from
Carol
Shelley,
took over.
Was, we were small potatoes. So we slipped in totally under the radar, and they gave us a pretty good deal because they wanted to get a group that was not a restaurant to bring people in, which we did. And so those two things really saved us. I mean, because who knows, even now, I mean, market rates, all told, it's amazing how much it sort of has saved us to be able to be in that space, and in a space that who knows what it would have turned into, and when we were negotiating, when they were putting in the elevators and stuff like that. And hopefully John Turnbull's not watching. We'll see.
I told him we were doing this.
Having a conversation with John Turnbull, and I've said this to many people, where he was like, well, we're thinking about turning your space into refrigerated storage for the restaurant. And I'm like, really? That's the competition, like,
wow,
or refrigerated storage? Oh, neck and neck. So.
But Ben was very instrumental in helping you guys stay there, correct?
Yeah, Ben was Ben Friends Night. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that was great.
Carol was Carol.
I only know Carol from afterward.
I'll just leave it at that. Fine, fine. And then Ben came in, and I think I may have told you this, but we were renegotiating. Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to have to move? Are we going to get kicked out? We definitely were going to have to move because of the elevator issue. And I remember meeting with Ben a couple times, and we talked about stuff. And he had come from Santa Monica. He'd run the Santa Monica Pier.
Santa Monica Pier.
And I remember having a meeting with him and talking about it. I was like, well, hey, Ben, you ran the Santa Monica Pier, and I know the Pike Place Market is, as you know, a dream job.
It is a dream job. It's my dream job.
If only dreams came true.
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, so what brought you up here? And he said, well, a couple of things. My wife's from up here, and his wife taught high school. She actually taught at Ballard High, where my son went. But this was before that. And he said two things I thought was it was pretty funny, because we were talking about it. And I said, oh, and he's like, yeah, she wanted to move back. And I said, oh, really? Well, what does your wife do? And so he told me, oh, she teaches high school, and she went to, I think, UCLA or USC, anyway, Southern California school. And I said, oh, really? What did she study? And he said, theatrical costuming. And in that moment, I'm like, she's a theater nerd. I've got you. And then the second thing is, she said, oh, and she went to the UW with Joel McHale. So she used to come down and see Joel McHale do theater sports. And I'm like, now I've really got you. now I've got you, right? And but he was super generous and instrumental in taking care of us. He talked about all kinds of pitching a tent down on the waterfront for us to do shows in.
Oh, wow, that's great.
And we eventually moved over to Intiman for 8 months.
Back home.
8 months. Yeah. Well, as I used to say, because we came from Intiman to the market, I used to always say moving back there is kind of like moving back in with your parents. It's just temporary till I get on my feet. But when Intiman, and again, another thing about having been at Intiman a lot, when they, as an organization, folded, I was on the phone with them the next day, just because I knew, like, hey, we could totally use that space if, and if they're looking to work some kind of deal, which they were. And again, we would not have been able to do it without a lot of support from Ben in the market, because it was more expensive than we could afford, but with their help, we were able to do it. So it was like, that was all great, and then to top it off, to sing the market praises, we were not out of that space as long as they thought we were. They said, oh, it's going to be like a year and a half. And I think it was 8 months.
Wow.
Before we were back in. And there were lots of discussions that went on, and again, another one that I should have John Turnbull on the show.
Should have John Turnbull on the show, because we haven't even talked about the, no offense, most famous part of this theater, worldwide known.
Right. But I remember having a conversation with him where he's like, oh, well, we're thinking about turning your space, like we're going to do something like the triple door, like a performance venue. And it was just like, and I don't know that I actually said this to him, but I definitely remember having the thought of, like, yeah, you're going to open the triple door around the corner from the triple door. All
kinds of ideas that come on around here at the market. We go down every path to see what we can do.
And so I'm pretty convinced in my head that everybody associated with the market walked through the market theater one day, looked around, saw there's no fly space. They've lost a wing to an elevator, blah, blah. They're like, this is a dump. Nobody's going to want, I guess the theater. Okay.
Well, I mean, it's really funny. First of all, I want to say how I wanted to thank the people before I even got involved, or you were part of that, and Josh was, and David Silverman, and Barry Press. You all were Keith, you all were in these different groups that ended up being Theater Sports Unexpected Productions. I need to, in the job that I am in, have to thank the previous executive directors, because you guys are my home. I mean, I have a home, in Seattle, but you guys were my tribe, and you still are. I mean, I've got the old hags that we go out. Well, we used to go out before the pandemic. Those are the Jill, Susie, and Alicia and me, the old hags. We go out about every quarter to have dinner. You're my brother. Josh is my bro. I mean, it's just, you're my tribe. And so to thank first the people that started all of this, and then the market, the Pike Place Market is a partner with you guys, and I take me out of it. And I thank Ben and John and everybody that made it happen, that you're still here.
Yeah.
And I mean, before the pandemic and even now, you guys are doing amazing stuff because you can't be open. Your fundraiser, by the way, Randy, amazing. I have to tell you that. I have to tell you, I never knew how you do Christmas Carol as on a Zoom call, but you guys were amazing.
Well, thank you.
Anyway, so I have to thank them too for keeping you here, because you're my family, you're my group,
Right.
and you guys do great stuff. So I just have to say that. I'm not a part of it anymore, but you guys do great stuff.
Right. Well, thank you, Mary. And I mean, there are so many unsung heroes in it.
Yes.
Talking just about the fundraiser, I mean, all the support that we got, which I think everyone, surprise is maybe too strong a word, but I mean, it was humbling, the amount of support we got, and from people and from all around the world, and people who we hadn't heard from in a long time, and former students, um, and so that was cool. And there are so many people along the way there, and that's like when I talk about people, instrumental in the theater, like who had this idea, who had that. And it's sort of like, it is kind of like definitely like an improvisation, a collaborative committee that kind of operates, you know, and the stuff that we put up with, that, in hindsight, kind of go, what were we thinking, like, and Josh can attest to this, if he's still on, about, like when we moved into University Heights, where we, our office was literally the janitor's closet.
I'll never forget that.
Right. I mean, you could not pass each other in the, it'd be like, okay, I have to walk out to let you out, and then I can go back in. And at times we had like 5 people working in there. It was like a little improv sweatshop. I don't know what it was, but you know, but stuff
Randy,
like that.
I have to say something that you're just gonna have to sit there and take it. Okay. You know how much respect I have for you. I feel like I'm some sort of, I don't know, whatever. But anyway, you have taken this improv around the world. You are the elder statesman now. You are the person everybody looks to. You said it was a worldwide audience run. When you said that, I went, I got to say this. I mean, everybody in the history, what's doing now, but through the years, you've gone out and you've done shows, you've taught classes, you made partnerships, you brought the elder statesmen before you to come to the theater and teach, you made partnerships with them. You are, for me, just so amazing in how you grew what improv was here in Seattle, took it out with the other groups around the world, with Keith Johnstone's theater sports or other groups, and just made a name for Unexpected Productions or Seattle Theater Sports. And this respect grew for this group around the world. And I'm going to say this, I don't know who's listening, but you guys need to get that mayor's award that they give at Bumbershoot. I've written 3 times to them. You guys need to get that award. And I don't know why you don't get it, but you need to get it. That's all I
Right.
have to say.
Cool.
Thank you.
Steve Grenley is with us. Look at that.
Hi, Steve Grenley.
He was one of your temps, wasn't he?
Steve Grenley was one of my temporaries. He was. And I used to see Steve Grenley and his father at the film fest, as you did too, at the film festival for years.
Yes.
Years.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It's like it
is. Oh my God.
Well, and if you're gonna sing my praises, Mary, I guess you're gonna have to be my guest every week.
Nobody's gonna want that. No one is gonna want that.
No.
But
there, yeah, but I mean, all the effort that went into it from everyone, and
yeah,
and every, my memory of it, and maybe it's not entirely true, but my memory of it, with all the people that we're talking about, and that history in terms of why it worked, was, whether we knew it or not, everyone was kind of doing it for the right reason.
Exactly.
Nobody was trying to capitalize on it or do stuff. and I've said many times to students, I said, I've managed to eke out a living in the arts. How did I do it? I have no idea. I can't go, here are the 5 steps that you need to do this. It's like totally random. And, just said yes to stuff, as you remember, like, and everyone, a lot of the people on the list here, when we started, we had no money. I mean, when I started as artistic director, it was $50 a month and nobody wanted to do it.
I remember that.
Keith did it for a while and then he didn't want to do it anymore. And it was like, well, somebody's got to do it. All right, I'll do it. So I remember distinctly, especially when we first moved in the Market Theater, selling pictures and whatnot up top and then walking down to the theater at night and spending all my time there. But there were lots of people like that. Lots of people
like that.
And,
yep.
And so, I mean, it really is a testament to everyone that was around in those days. And it's a little bit different now in that we have an established school. There are lots of established schools. There's lots of books about improv. There's improv on TV. A lot of people know about it. And on top of everything else, and Rebecca says, wow, hey, you guys.
Hi, Rebecca. I told your story at Temporaries Incorporated.
But anyway, I mean, back when we were doing this, nobody knew what improv was, including us. I mean, we were sort of like, I don't know, let's just keep moving forward. And
but you all were you still are, but you all were very smart. You all were. I mean, I love just sitting with you, the group, and just listening to you talk. You were very well read, all of you. You kept up with what was going on in the news, so you could incorporate all of that into your performances. You guys were all just very, and they still are, but that's where I grew up, in that era. And you all very smart and very talented. So anyway, I just have to. I don't want to sound like I'm sucking up, but
that's okay. You can suck up.
I don't know why I'd suck up, but anyway.
No, it's fine. Well, and what was interesting was moving into the Market Theater in 91 was all of a sudden that became the new, like when we were itinerant, we were always like, well, we've got a trash can full of props that's in Mary's car. And we do a show. And even when we were at Intiman, we were doing, for a while there, we were doing theater sports on Fridays and then long form on Saturdays or one of those nights. And, but when we moved in the Market Theater, and all of a sudden it's like, holy cow, we got every night we got to do something.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden became the the new level of. And I remember in May of 91, it coincided with one of Del Close's workshops or rehearsals. I can't remember if he was directing something or I think he was doing a workshop. But he was in town, and so I said, hey, Del, let's go and check out this theater we just got. And it was like before we had, and there were so many people, myself, Barb Klansnick, a bunch of other people, were there day and night just tearing crap out and doing stuff. It was before any of that started. It was still basically looked like a movie theater. And we went in there and we sat, and I remember exactly where we sat. And Del looked around and said, well, this is quite the place. And then when he said, well, I don't envy all of the work you have coming. It's like, and I kind of laughed it off at the time, but man, he was right. It was so much work to do that. But again, a lot of people did the same thing, to do the same thing.
He always scared me.
Del?
Del scared me.
Well, he scared a lot of people, but he scared me when I first got to know him. I was like, I would always stand behind people so that I wasn't in direct, because I was thinking he's going to turn.
I remember the first time you went to Chicago to see Del, or I don't know what you were doing, teaching or taking a class or whatever. And I think you went to his apartment and you came back and you said, oh, Mary, it would just creep you out if you went into that apartment. He goes, you said there was newspapers and books piled everywhere, and there's just this little walkway. He goes, you just couldn't have handled it.
Yeah, well, he had an altar.
He had an altar.
um, that he had in his living room. This giant bar, with candle wax all over it, and all this stuff. And then, yeah, oh yeah. And then his bedroom was, he had a tall lamp, um, like a end table lamp size, but no shade on it at all. Books on two sides of basically a mattress that was on the floor, and he was totally fine with it. And so it was like, you know, um,
Yeah, he had tons of respect for you, Randy. I know you had tons of respect for him, but he had tons of respect for you. As a matter of fact, he kind of passed the torch to you, did he not?
in a way,
Yeah,
in some ways, yeah.
that's amazing.
I do feel blessed, with that, in the sense that I felt like he did, and a lot of those guys did not so much say, "Hey, now you carry the torch" or whatever,
Right.
but just in dialogue with them, just being able to kind of go, "Okay, I think they like what I'm doing, or they see how I'm taking what they're doing and taking it further," and that was great. And again, it was really great getting back to UP. It was great to have what Floyd used to call the sandbox, right? To have the sandbox to play in, which is the Market Theater, which is the organization that we've been able um, to be able to produce all these shows and be able to put the stuff up, bring in these teachers, and put together stuff. I mean, none of that would have been possible if it weren't for the organization of the group, as well as the people that blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah,
And there were a lot of tears
a lot of tears.
that went
We
into it.
we don't want to even get into the retreats we used to do every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I'll
Some
never
stuff
forget the
we should
one.
do.
I don't know where we were in Whidbey Island, and Scott Creighton goes, "Okay, I'm going to stay up all night to see what happens. Usually I get too sleepy and I go to bed, but I'm going to stay up and see what happens." I'll never forget that. I don't know what happened, but
Wow.
anyway, yeah.
All right. Let's
These
see.
are all my little memories.
Ron said he took improv for the first time 2006, 2007, and remembers people talking about Dell. Similar stories. Yeah.
Who's that?
Rowan.
Rowan.
And he's asking, do you have any favorite improv books? And I'm not sure. I guess we could both answer that, but I will address it to you since you're the guest. Is there an improv book that you really go to? And it doesn't even necessarily need to be a book about improv. Maybe it's something you kind of have read and gone, that reminds me of this kind of attitude, or that reminds me of this kind of.
Well, it's funny because it's like when my brother said I used to come and watch Saturday Night Live at his house. Reading the books about the early days of Second City and Saturday Night Live reminds me of the early days of theater sports and unexpected productions.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know if it's youth. I don't know if it's because we were working on something that, it felt like you were the only one in on the club or whatever till it got bigger. But it just felt like you were in on something that was just really amazing and creative and cool. And then it grew into what it grew into. So I guess it's the books about, I don't have many books about improv itself. Like I said, it kind of scared me and I didn't think I was very talented at it. But reading about the old days on those, the Second City and Saturday Night Live, it reminded me of that, you guys, not me, you guys, building this theater. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's yeah, I keep toying with the idea that somewhere maybe for our 40th anniversary, doing like a limited edition, collecting people's stories about those days. And Andrew Hamudi, who Josh reminded me was also our IT guy way back, because he was like the one person I think that owned a computer. But a number of years ago, for one of our, I mean, it was our 25th anniversary or whatever, he had this really great suggestion that I think about all the time, and I should do it for our 40th anniversary, which is, get a collection of old UP people and have them talk about what they remember about each other. Because what somebody's going to remember about me is going to be different than what I remember about me, or what I remember about you is going to be different than stuff that you know. And I always thought that was really kind of a good idea. And yeah, I think it was a TRS 80, Paul Kellum. So what a memory. No,
Paul's amazing.
um, but and just to finish the question we're on, there are a few books that I really like. If you are looking at history, as Marion is talking about, I think Janet Coleman's book, The Compass, is a pretty amazing read, kind of leading to that period up to and through the early days of Second City, but to read about those guys in Chicago in that day, and also the philosophical approach of Paul Sills, David Shepard, Severin Darden, Del Close, Barbara Harris, all the Elaine May, all these people, is pretty amazing read. In terms of improv books, I usually recommend two books. One is Keith Johnson's Improv. I just think it's just a great book to read. And actually, both these books you can read in like an hour and a half. They're not big books. But Johnson's Improv is great. And I love Steve Nekmanovich's Free Play in its approach to improv, but also I love that it's not about theater. It's more about music. And so it's just a way of thinking about this in a different way. And I know he has a new book called As Is or something like that. I have it. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I like Steve's work. So there's two books that I generally will send people to start with. I mean, there's so many books now, and I clearly haven't read them all. But I would start with some of those. And Paul, yes, 8 megabytes. You didn't need more than 8 megabytes. That's all you needed. Who's going to use more? Come on. Those were
That's
the
hysterical.
days.
Those were the days. All right, Randy, I got to bring one thing up. I know we're getting close. That it's not about the theater itself or the creative process or all the people that made this place so great. Because being the executive director of the Pike Place Market, we do have to really quickly talk about the gum wall.
Yes.
Because people think it's just the gum wall, but our audience built that gum wall.
Yes.
Would you please give a little bit of history to that?
Yes, I'll give you my standard.
Please do.
Sorry. Yeah, so we used to line our audiences up the alley. And the original gum wall technically is if you're ever in the market, is the wall between our door and the door to what is now the elevator lobby. That was the original gum wall because we lined audiences up and around the corner by Il Bistro. And it started with people putting pennies on the wall. So they would take gum and they would put a penny in the gum and then stick it to the wall. And then at various times, a few times a month, homeless people, I assume, would come and pry all the pennies and change off of the wall and just leave the gum. And then it began to spread. And as Mary knows, was it 2 or 3 times we were—
I say it's 2, you say 3, but go ahead. Maybe Josh would know.
That we were told to remove the gum. So we went
by John Turnbull.
By John Turnbull. I have a signed letter, so you can't deny it. But we'd go out there, little paint scrapers and buckets of stuff and remove it.
Hot water.
Yep. And then eventually it became a attraction. And the part that I tell people all the time, so you may have read this or seen this from me before, and Mary's heard it a million times, is I do think the gum wall is really great for unexpected productions and being an improv theater because it's an ever evolving working piece of art. So anytime somebody adds gum to it, it changes into a new piece. And so to me, it's like such a great representation of what we try to do inside the theater that's happening outside. And it's also a collaborative effort. There's not one person that can say, I started the gum wall, or I own the gum wall. It's just this kind of collaborative piece that everyone contributes to. And it's ever changing. And that's the kind of stuff that I think that what we've been talking about, our theater is made up of a bunch of people's contributions. And, some we know, some we don't know. And it's ever changing what we're doing inside the space as well. So, Josh is saying, oh, you're owning up that you supported the gum scraping the first time. The
I
wall was
mean,
disgusting. The wall was disgusting. Wouldn't it still be disgusting? Anyway.
well, it's funny. People around here will go, "Oh, I hate the gum wall." I'm like, as long as I'm here, I'm that gum wall. That's my history.
But what
I
I
love
find
that gum wall.
what I find amazing about the gum wall is you go out there, like probably right now, you go out there and there are a whole bunch of people that are getting their pictures taken. They're taking their masks off and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going, are you kidding me? Like, this is like the the biggest spot of germs and urine you'd ever want concentrated in Seattle. And you're taking your mask off to get my picture taken with the gum wall. I'm just like,
But people have gotten their wedding pictures taken in front of there. They've had photo shoots. When the market cleaned it off, which was killed me, with everybody's in hazmat suits, and we remember I don't even know if we had gloves on when we first scraped it off, and it went all over the world. They sent out a press release and it went all over the world. It's on the front page of the New York Times. And I'm like, all these PR jobs I had leading up to that, I never got a story on the front page of the New York Times. The gum wall got on the front page
yeah,
of the New York Times.
yeah, it's absolutely
Yep.
true. And everyone contributing to it. I mean, I get, and again, sort of half jokingly, I get requests to be interviewed at the gum wall more than I get requests to be interviewed about our shows.
Yep.
And that's okay, but I think it's just a perfect piece of Seattle. So we are going to wrap it up here in a couple minutes because we're a few minutes over. So thank you all for sticking around. But I do want to mention a couple things because I know you're reticent about not getting on stage. And I think I have pimped you on stage, maybe tricked you into going on stage more times than you care to imagine. But my two favorites were one when we did the very first Improvathon and that was back at the Glenn Hughes Playhouse, if you remember.
Oh my God, yes.
And I got you to be, I think you were the last person on, if I'm not mistaken. We did that giant growing and shrinking machine, which involved the entire company. So for those who are not familiar with the growing and shrinking machine, you start with one or two people, somebody else frees, you begin a 3-person scene, then you do a 4-person scene, blah, 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 and you grow to, normally it's like 8 people, and then you shrink, and you blah, 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 and you end up with the same 2 people that started. Well, we did this one at the end of the Improvathon. I'm sure, was that your first show, Paul? Really?
Was it really?
Paul Cullen's first show, Improv.
Wow.
But I was going to say, I'm pretty sure Paul was there. And I want to say we had, I think it was like 45 people because we invited everybody who had been in the Improvathon to come. And that's how I got you to go on stage. I'm like, well, everyone involved is on, Mary. You're going to have to go on. And, and so then you went on, but it was colossal. And it took hour and a half. I don't know how long it took, forever to do it. And
I think it was a boob joke. I that's the only thing I can remember. And I remember coming off and somebody looked at me and went, "A boob joke, Mary?" So it might have been that.
And then years later in the Market Theater, we did another Improvathon, and you were the highest bidder on we bid people could bid on having an hour of stage time, and so we did the famous Mary's Reconciliation Hour, which Mary didn't want to do the show. She didn't want to be in the show, but she won the hour. So we set up a table on stage. I think Keith set up the table on stage, and you were our business manager. So you came out and for an hour balanced our books on stage while we did improv around you.
See, Bill? See, I'm telling my brother that. That's right, you did. I remember that was great. I just sat there. I wrote checks and balanced the books on stage while you guys did whatever you were doing. And you guys used to, if somebody didn't show up to be a judge or you needed somebody to play, I'd be out there doing the box office or sitting in the back and you'd be like, "You want to be a judge?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll be a judge." So I would judge occasionally too. And I did MC a couple of times too, but it was also always because of somebody didn't show up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I got talent, Randy. I have talent.
I know. I know. You should give up this day job thing you're doing and just come on over and stand by the gum wall. But
I do that. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, we'll get you on stage.
Yeah.
We'll get you there. So, and that still happens. We still pull people in last minute to judge and to do and often we'll tell students, and if there are any watching this right now, one of the easiest ways to get involved in UP is to just be around, because inevitably somebody will walk out and go, you come with me. And then
It's very true. I mean, it really is very true to this day.
Yeah.
Because there's always something that needs to be done over there, or somebody needs to fill in.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, Mary, my gosh.
Well, thank you,
We
Randy. I
keep
really
the
appreciate
score from
this.
smiling and laughing. It's so great to hear all these people. Paul, you and I will talk. We should do a show.
Hi, Paul.
And Josh and everybody, Eugene. Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
And again, if you've enjoyed this and care to make a donation or want to find out more about our shows and classes, unexpectedproductions.org. We're back into doing these up close in 2021. Again, we won't have shows until February 3rd, which is Wednesday, and February 6th, which is Saturday, and there'll be new shows. So come and check those out, and come down, support the Pike Place Market if you're in Seattle. A lot going on, and a lot of vendors and people are open.
We are open and we are safe, and come on down.
Yeah, and it's a great environment. Everyone's really helping each other out, so it's really
Yes.
a really fun place to be.
Yeah.
So come and do that. And we have free gum at the gum wall, so if you want to take a piece of gum, feel free to do that. But thank you, Mary,
Thank you, Randy,
for going way back. And thanks to all of you for watching. And Josh, we love you too.
Josh, we love you. That's why I tease you. You know that.
So, yeah, next week we'll have another topic and another person, either from UP's historic past or talking about Improv's future. So thank you guys for spending an hour with us, and take care.